When I was a kid, there were a lot of things I thought I'd want to be when I grew up. Astronaut, restaurant owner, maybe even president of the United States. What I never thought I would be is the girl who went viral for dumping a bowl of punch on her new husband's head at her wedding reception. Well, let me explain. People always told me I had an easy life. And for a long time, I did. My parents made lots of money with their company. At school, I was very popular. When I had sleepovers, my parents served elaborate dinners and let us use the home movie theater in the basement. I had servants who took care of my chores. On my 13th birthday, my parents hired a circus to come to our house. You get the picture. Once, at school, this girl got mad at me and said, "Oh my God, Mila, you're so clueless, aren't you? Nobody actually likes you. They just like your money." Of course, my friends put that girl in her place. But her words really hurt. I wasn't clueless. And people did like me for who I was. Towards the end of high school, my parents started acting weird. They were anxious and irritable all the time. We stopped going to fancy dinners, and we let some of the servants go. I tried to ask what was going on, but my dad said, "Don't you worry your pretty little head about it, princess. Everything will be all right." I noticed that when we did go places, our security guards went with us. Once I turned 18 and started going out more on my own, they got me my own personal security guard. Jake wasn't that much older than me, and he was very cute, so I didn't object. He totally started flirting with me. I loved it so much, I kind of forgot to wonder why we needed more security in the first place. One night, Jake and I were lying under the stars together, talking about our future. I said I'd probably work for my parents' company. He laughed at me. "Do you even understand what they do?" That hurt. "I don't know much about it, but I'll learn." He shook his head. "You're so spoiled. You just snap your fingers and everything you need magically appears. How are you going to help run a business?" I got embarrassed then. He acted like he was teasing, but he wasn't. He kept asking me questions about the company, and I felt embarrassed and stupid for not knowing the answers. I didn't want to be some spoiled princess, not even knowing where all my money came from. That night, I tried asking my dad some questions. He just told me not to worry because I'd always have whatever I wanted in life. Wasn't that good enough for me? Eventually, I gave up asking. After that, I barely spoke to Jake. I mean, okay, he had been right. There was a lot I didn't know, but he'd been rude to point it out. I kept hoping he'd be mad that I was giving him the cold shoulder, but he didn't seem to notice. Once, I slammed my shoulder into his in the hall as we passed, like I didn't even see him. But he just kept talking on the phone to his buddy about some big plan of theirs coming up. Except the next night, I came home to find my bedspread covered with flower petals and a card on my pillow. The card was from Jake. He apologized for teasing me and said he knew I was smart and would go far in life. I sighed dreamily, looking at the rose petals. I knew it was cheesy, but it worked. I was totally falling for him. On graduation night, there was going to be a big bonfire for the seniors at a classmate's house. I was so excited to go. I even begged my parents to let me go without Jake. I mean, okay, I'd been drooling over him ever since he apologized. This was the end of my senior year. I didn't want to be the girl who showed up to the party with a babysitter. Also, I didn't want to remind my classmates I was different from them. Ever since that night Jake had called me spoiled, I'd tried to be myself more at school. I was finally starting to feel like I fit in, like people liked me for me. Before I left, my dad shoved a huge folder into my bag. "Here," he said, "some kindling for the bonfire." "What's this?" I asked. "Just some old bank statements and stuff. They say even when you shred those, people can sometimes piece them back together. Don't want to take any chances. Just promise me you'll throw it right into the fire, okay?" I know I probably should have been crazy suspicious at that point, but I had led such a sheltered life. I trusted my parents completely. I walked to the party, ready to make the most of this night of total freedom. But suddenly, I heard footsteps pounding up behind me. It was too late for me to even turn before someone slammed into me, knocking me to the ground. I went sprawling, my bag coming off my shoulder. The person grabbed it, and out of pure reflex, I held on to one strap of it. We played tug of war, but the other person was stronger. They pulled the bag away from me and ran off into the night. Oh God, my dad was going to be so mad at me. What about the bank statements? Was the thief going to steal my family's bank information or something? I stood, my legs like jelly. I was scraped and bruised from the sidewalk. Suddenly, a familiar voice said, "Mila? Are you okay?" It was Jake. I didn't think. I just threw myself into his arms. "What's wrong?" he asked. I told him my bag had been stolen, but I begged him not to tell my dad. I didn't want my parents ever to know. Jake promised, and suddenly I realized how awkwardly close we were standing. My palms started to sweat. "Did my parents make you follow me?" I asked. I couldn't believe it. After I'd asked them to let me go to the party alone, even in the dim light of the street lamps, I could see him blush. "No," he said. "I was looking for you. I can't let you go alone. I worry too much." I think that was the moment I fell in love with him. My knight in shining armor. A couple of weeks later, my new happiness was shattered. I came home from a friend's house to find people in suits moving all the furniture out of my house. I begged for someone to tell me what was going on, but no one would. I didn't even know where my parents were. Finally, one of our maids told me that my parents had been arrested. I still didn't understand, but a sick feeling in my stomach told me that this might have something to do with my stolen bag and the folder my dad had given me. Poor, stupid little rich princess. My life was about to become a nightmare. A few years later, I was ringing up customers at a clothing store in the mall when a customer pointed to me. "You're that girl from the news. You're scum, just like your parents." I was used to this happening. I had moved away from my former town, but people still recognized me. My parents' case had gotten international media attention. Apparently, they had been running a pyramid scheme for years. They'd stolen lots of people's money. My mom was under house arrest, and my dad was serving prison time. I'd been clueless. At first, I couldn't believe my old life was gone. I'd lost everything. My money, my friends, my chance to go to college. I hadn't even known where to begin looking for a job. An old classmate who felt sorry for me had helped me get this one. The only thing I hadn't lost was Jake. He was my rock, and he stuck with me during the trial and the mess that followed it. He wasn't officially my security guard anymore, but he would still walk places with me and chase the press away when they tried to interview me. I was so grateful to him. That night, we were sitting in our apartment with glasses of wine. It wasn't very expensive wine, and I still had to remind myself not to be disappointed by things like that. He'd made me a nice candlelit dinner, but my mind was still elsewhere. I finally told him about that customer. "You know people are always going to be like that," he said. "You can't let it get to you." I told him I knew that, but I just wished that my life hadn't turned out this way. It wasn't fair that I had to get a job. I missed my old house, and I missed my parents. "You need to learn to work for what you want," he told me. "You're not special just because your parents had money, and they deserved what they got." It felt like a slap in the face. I stormed out of the kitchen and shut myself in our bedroom. A few hours later, he came in. He apologized and said that wasn't how this night was supposed to go. I asked him what he meant, and he pulled out a small velvet box. He got down on his knee beside the bed. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. "You're very strong," he told me, "and I know that you are learning how to work for what you want in life. I admire that about you. Will you marry me?" I could hardly keep from squealing. I jumped off the bed and pulled him up, and he took me in his arm. It was still another year before we had money for a wedding. As the big day drew near, I got some amazing news. My dad was getting out of prison early. He would be there to walk me down the aisle. I hadn't visited him in prison until recently. For many years, I felt so betrayed by him and didn't want anything to do with him. But I started answering his letters a couple of months ago. With this new chapter starting in my life, I realized I needed to forgive him. I told him that there was someone special in my life. Someone I thought he would be excited to meet, but I didn't want to give away the surprise until Dad was out of prison and could meet my fiancé face to face. I hoped that he would be happy for me. 2 days before the wedding, Jake started getting antsy. I wondered if he had doubts about marrying me. I finally asked him what was wrong, but he wouldn't say. I told him I was hurt that he would keep secrets from me, especially since we were about to be husband and wife. He said I was right. He was just nervous about the wedding, but didn't want to ruin my good mood. He didn't want there to be any secrets between us. Just love. I thought that sounded perfect. On the big day, my dad and I waited in the wings until it was time for him to walk me down the aisle. First, we watched Jake come out with his mom. Well, my dad watched Jake, and I watched my dad to see his reaction. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Oh no, maybe he was upset to see a reminder of our past. I hoped he would get over it and help me celebrate this magical day. There was no more time to think about it before we started strolling down the aisle. I smiled bigger than I ever had in my life as I met Jake at the altar. The rest of the ceremony was a blur. At the reception, I danced and danced. My dad found me a couple of times and told me that we needed to talk, but I was having too much fun. It was definitely the happiest day of my life, but eventually he pulled me off to the side. "I need to tell you something, Mila," he said. "The man you just married is the one who destroyed our family." I couldn't breathe for a moment. "What are you talking about?" "He hired somebody to steal your bag that night. I thought I was being safe by having you take the folder and burn it. We were already under suspicion, so law enforcement was watching our property all the time. They would have noticed a fire. I wanted the documents destroyed off of our property. I couldn't believe what he was telling me. Jake would never do that, I said. He rescued me that night, so you wouldn't suspect him, my dad said. He told the thief exactly when to attack you, so he would be there to swoop in and save you. God, you're so clueless. What happened to us is your fault, I told my dad. No one else's. You're the one who stole from people. You deserve to get caught. I stormed away back into the reception hall looking for Jake. He might have done the right thing, technically, by exposing my dad's crime, but he lied to me for years. And just the other day, he said he wanted no secrets between us. What a hypocrite. I grabbed the punch bowl off the table as I walked in. Jake was busy talking to his best man and didn't notice me. I came right up to him and overturned the entire bowl on his head. He gasped and sputtered, dripping wet, bits of fruit clinging to his hair and his tuxedo. Honestly, it was the most satisfying moment of my life. Some people were laughing, thinking it was a joke. Other people looked nervous. The photographer was snapping pictures like crazy, and everybody's cell phone was in the air taking their own photos and video. "You liar!" I yelled at Jake. I took my rings off and threw them on the floor. Is it too late to take my vows back? Because even if I said I do, now I don't. For the next 2 weeks, Jake tried calling me every day, but I wouldn't pick up. I was once again in the center of a media storm. People would snap pictures of me on the street. I was in videos and memes all over the internet. I didn't care. I just stayed in my house, too depressed to go out. I was really clueless, and because of that, I'd lost everything. One day, on my way home from the store, I found Jake waiting outside my building. He begged me to come in, saying he wanted to talk. I finally gave in. We ended up talking for hours. He told me the whole story, how angry he was when he found out about my parents' scheme. He wanted to get some proof to show the FBI. Because he hung around me so much, he knew about my dad asking me to take that folder to the bonfire. I was trying not to cry. So, that whole time, you were only pretending to like me? He begged me to believe that he'd always liked me. But he hadn't wanted me to join my parents' company and get involved in their crimes. He just wanted me to be my own person. And once I started doing that, he fell completely in love with me. You ruined my whole life, I told him. I know. I'm sorry. I thought about telling you 1,000 times, but you didn't, I told him. And you know what's ironic? You gave me the strength to be my own person. So now, I'm strong enough to tell you that I don't want you anywhere near me ever again. He looked shocked. He said he was hoping we could work things out, that now that this was out in the open, there'd be no more secrets between us. So now, instead of a wedding photo in my apartment, I have a framed picture of me dumping punch over Jake's head. Sure, it's a little unusual, but it reminds me every day that I'm nobody's spoiled princess anymore.
I ran as fast as I could. Every inch of my body was shaking. I was so scared. How could I be so stupid? How could I let this happen to myself? I ducked down in the plants, terrified. What if they caught me? What would they do to me now that I knew the truth? Just the thought of it made me want to throw up. I could see their flashlights looking for me. With shaking hands, I started to dial 911 on the phone. If something happened to me now, no one would know where I went. The phone started to ring, just as their flashlights got closer and closer. I held my breath as the 911 operator picked up. How was I going to get out of this? Every step they inched closer and closer to me. My chance of getting out of here alive seemed worse and worse. Before we get into my escape, I need to explain how I got myself into such a terrifying situation. To be honest, all I did was wake up. One morning, I opened my eyes in bed and felt a wave of panic wash over me. My head felt so fuzzy, almost like I was in a dream or something. I looked around and started to really freak out. I didn't recognize anything. Where was I? And who was I? I got out of bed and started to look around the room. Anna was in pink letters on the wall. But did I even like pink? Why didn't that name sound familiar? I felt like I was going to pass out. None of this made sense. Was I going crazy? Why couldn't I remember anything? What was my name? Was it really Anna? I bolted out the door into a strange hallway. I felt like I was on some alien planet. I had to find a phone or something. I had to call 911. maybe someone there would be able to help me figure out what was going on. I ran into the kitchen, and that's when two people stood up. A man and a woman in their 50s both looked at me. They asked if I was okay, if I was feeling any better after hitting my head. But I didn't know these people. Why were they acting like they knew me? I shoved past them, reaching for the phone on the wall. The woman stopped me and grabbed my arm. She kept calling me Anna and told me to calm down. I freaked out, yelling at her to get her hands off me, to leave me alone and let me go. Then she said she was my mother. But no, there's absolutely no way she could be. I would remember my own mother, wouldn't I? Even if I had hit my head? The two managed to sit me down and explain everything. Apparently, I had hit my head a few days ago and had been out cold ever since. The doctors told them to just monitor me until I woke up. I told them I didn't remember any of that I didn't know this house, that they weren't my parents. They looked so concerned, I started to feel a little embarrassed. Was there something wrong with me? Tears started to roll down my face. That's when the woman pulled out a baby book and started showing me photos of what apparently was my childhood. And I had to admit, the photos looked exactly like me. My fear started to grow. Maybe they really were my parents, and I was going crazy. Through my tears, I told them I didn't remember anything. The woman rubbed my back and told me it was okay. We would figure out what was wrong with me together. They had been so scared of losing me. They were just glad I was okay. The woman took me up to my bedroom and told me to lie down and sleep some more. Maybe when I woke up, I would feel better. I faded in and out of sleep for a few hours, stuck between weird dreams and being awake. Have you ever had a night like this, where you feel like something in your life just isn't right? At one point, I woke up and heard talking outside my door. I crept over to try to hear what they were saying. My mother and father talked in hushed tones. My mother was concerned something was really wrong with me, that they should take me to some inpatient care. I felt a weird rush of guilt and embarrassment. They really did think I was going crazy, and they probably weren't wrong. But I didn't want to go to a facility like that. What if I went there and they really did think I was insane? Would I spend the rest of my life there? Over the next few days, I tried to put on a happy face. I was terrified of being sent away, so I had to try my hardest to get used to this life. Everything around me still felt really alien. But I thought maybe if I tried to calm down, everything would feel normal a lot sooner. My house was apparently a farm. Once I started really exploring, I started to feel a little creeped out. We were the only house for miles in either direction, all the way out in the middle of nowhere. Apparently, we had no TV, and I was homeschooled. I felt like I had memories of being in school, watching TV, but my mother explained I had gone to elementary school for years before she pulled me out for homeschooling. Honestly, I started to feel fairly comfortable. During the day, I would help on the farm. I'd take care of animals, water the garden, and help Mom cook dinner. It felt really relaxed, even though deep down, I was still having strange doubts. After a couple of days, it almost started to feel familiar. Maybe all the craziness was starting to wear off. Maybe I could be a normal person again. But that's when I found out. One night, before going to sleep, I saw something shining just at the foot of the bed, on the floor. When I picked it up, my heart stopped. It was a shiny gold necklace with a monogrammed D on it. Where could this possibly have come from? Did I have a friend I didn't remember? Had someone else been in here? And if it was mine, what was the letter for? I thought about asking my mom, but maybe it was better if I kept this as my little secret and investigated myself. A few nights later, at dinner, there was a knock at the door. My mom and dad both looked really alarmed. When they looked out front, there was a police car. Why were the police here? I was about to ask when my mom ushered me upstairs. I tried to listen as best as I could, and that's when I heard the word missing. Were they looking for a missing person? I felt a lump in my throat. Was I the missing person? Is that why I felt so out of place here? That night, I laid in bed staring at the ceiling for a long time. Maybe I was just being paranoid again. My mom had said herself I had shown signs of paranoia. And these people, they had been so nice to me. If I was really a missing person, why would they take such good care of me? Maybe if I found something to calm myself down, I would feel better. If I could just find my birth certificate or something. I tiptoed down over the stairs. I felt like I was doing something really wrong. They had taken care of me. Shouldn't I trust them? I looked through all the drawers in the house, trying desperately to find anything that would calm me down. But it's like none of our family documents were anywhere. They had to be tucked away somewhere. But where could that possibly be? I took a step in the office, and the wooden plank under me seemed to move. I lifted it up to find an entire box of documents underneath. Finally! Maybe there would be something in here that would help. When I lifted the first thing out of that box, my heart stopped. It was a school ID with the name Daria on it, and it was a photo of me, as clear as day. I couldn't breathe. I could hardly even think. Where had this come from? I looked even closer at the photo and realized I was wearing a necklace. The same necklace that I had found at the foot of my bed. My hands started to shake. I had to keep looking in the box. I had to get to the bottom of this. The next thing I pulled out was even more horrifying. It was an obituary, followed by a death certificate for a girl named Anna. She had died when I was 12 after a fall from the loft in the barn where she hit her head. I started to hyperventilate. Were they pretending that I was their daughter? Had they kidnapped me just so they could pretend Anna was still alive? I had to get out of there. I tried to put the plank back, just as I heard footsteps come down the stairs. I had to be fast. I scrambled to try and put it away, but whoever was walking definitely heard me. I bolted for the window, realizing it was my only escape. I grabbed the cell phone that was sitting on the desk and opened the window just as the woman opened the door. She froze, shocked. I told her I knew the truth. I jumped out the window and took off running. I felt like my whole body was on fire. I ran as fast as I could, but where on earth did I think I was going? There wasn't anyone for miles. I knew that, and they knew that. In the distance, I saw them both rush out of the house. I ducked into the rows of clotheslines, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to get out of this. If something happened to me, if they got a hold of me, my real parents would have no idea what happened to me. Tears started to spill down my face as I rushed to the door. I could hear their footsteps and see their flashlights as they hurried after me. With hands shaking, I dialed 911. I had to get the police here. It was the only way I was going to be able to survive. It was really my only way out. I listened to the phone ring, holding my breath. That's when I saw the lights getting closer and closer. They were only a few feet away. If I talked to the police, certainly they would hear me. The operator looked down, asking what my emergency was. I stayed silent and I looked away. The operator asked again and again if I had an emergency. Then she asked if there was a reason I couldn't sleep. If there was, she would ask me. I tried to hide the light from the phone and I pressed the button. She asked if I was in danger, and again I pressed the button. I was so afraid they would see. I was afraid I would never see my family again. The operator told me the police were on the way, and I felt a rush of relief. That's when the man found me with his flashlight. I ran as fast as I could through the corn, trying desperately to stay away. If I could just lead them to the house, maybe the police would be here by the time we got there. I couldn't even breathe anymore. The air in my lungs felt like fire. My legs felt like rubber. But this couldn't be the end. I broke out of the cornfield and found myself bathed in the red and blue light of a police car. I fell on the ground, crying as the police cuffed the man and woman. Their eyes nearly burnt a hole through me as they were put in the back of the car. The police officers ran to me, their eyes as big as an owl's. I had been missing for 3 months. They had no idea if they were ever going to find me. Once I got to the station, I was reunited with my real mother and father. It was like everything clicked for me. I still didn't remember my old life, but I felt like this was finally right. I'm working every day to get my memory back, and I did end up going to a facility where I'm getting counseling that is really helping me. Overall, I'm so happy to be home, and I wish that I'd trusted my instincts earlier.